Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. We are excited to have Dr. Ryan Joseph Allen here joining us, also a best-selling author and so much more. We're going to have a great conversation today about how he's helping people all over the world with what he does. So welcome. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so wonderful, Jill. And it's so great to get to spend space with you and time together. And so I'm so excited just to be with you and help spread some love today. That's always my goal.
Well, you say love must win, right?
Yeah. So I helped co-found a nonprofit several years ago. And the name is Love Must Win for a reason. So that's really everything that we do as an anti-violence initiative aspect to it. Ranging from anything from LGBTQ plus recovery services to we host a pride in our area in a rural community. So we do all kinds of things, especially with the LGBTQ plus populations. So.
Beautiful. So you're from Cincinnati, Ohio, right?
Yes.
And where do you want to start? Tell us more about yourself, if you don't mind. We can get into the book, your transformational coaching and all you do.
Yeah, well, there's so much, right? And that's where it started. It started when I was a kiddo. And people would ask what you wanted to do when you grew up. And I was like, I don't know, I'll do this or this. But I said, really, what I want to do is just help people.
Yeah.
And people would say, well, you can't do that for a job, right? You have to have a career. You have to have a job.
You're like, no, that's what I want to do. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. I just want to help people and bring some love. And I had such a big heart. By the time I was 6 or 7, I had my first thoughts of suicide and felt really disconnected from the world. And a big piece of that was that I was taught by extended family and society, et cetera, that LGBTQ plus people went to hell, and from a Christian perspective. And that broke my heart because I was so connected to source, divine, creator, God, love, whatever you want to call that, right? And it was so difficult to hear that, and my just little heart broke. And by the time I was a teenager, I started drugs, alcohol, and self-abusive behaviors, self-mutilation, had suicide attempts under my belt by the time I was 15. And it was then that I got into college somehow, right, by the grace of God. But then I started on a hardcore opioid addiction soon after. And this really led me to a place of really misalignment, right, with my core essence of that little 5 or 6-year-old kiddo that just really wanted to help people, right? I wasn't even helping myself, let alone could I ever help people. And it led into this conversation with my drug dealer of all people, who reconnected me with God. It was a simple conversation that we were having, and it really allowed me to feel that feeling that I had when I was a youngster again. And after our conversation, I went to my bathroom, I fell on my knees and put my hands against the wall and just said, God, I need you to save my life. I was still in addiction at the time, and my daughter was almost a year old. So I was being like an absent father and really perpetuating those cycles of fathers not being present for my life, but also so many others that I'm sure can relate to that as kind of like an absent father. And so I asked God to save my life and kind of turn things around for me and really started learning what my God felt like to me that was different than what I was taught by my family or churches or by society, and really dug into my heart and figured out what that meant to me.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing your experience and for being so open with us. And now, of course, your calling is to do the work that you do. And my drug dealer brought me to God. Now, when did you write that book?
So it's been a process for about 3 years now. It launched in 2021 in October timeframe, and did really well. And then as soon as it kind of launched, I didn't have much time to kind of sit in the glory of it, right? I was in the middle of my dissertation process for my doctoral degree. So I kind of it was like one of those, let's celebrate, good, we got it out. And then from there, it kind of, things shifted into that space of really working in the research area that I had chosen, which is post-traumatic spiritual growth for LGBTQ plus people, which really ties into my book, right? It ties into my experiences and the
Yeah.
experience of so many others around me, be it LGBTQ or ally or other. That was what my research was on, and it showed that everyone, at least everyone that was in my research, that was part of the kind of the qualification for being a part of it. But all of them experienced and endured such horrific, to varying degrees of spiritual or religious trauma. And it really led to other traumas being perpetuated in their life. And so the research is really exciting. I love what I get to do because I get to couple research with my story. So it's not just my story and it's not just research, it's like together. And on top of, the nonprofit work I've done for the last decade, it really just makes this perfect intersection of being able to help people and being able to live my purpose, and in this really authentic and beautiful way. And I get to do beautiful things like share with others, but also, hands on the ground, giving free hugs out at events, or hosting events and just letting people ask questions about, what this means to them, what my drug dealer brought me to God, what their my drug dealer brought me to God experiences, right? Because we all have different stories and experiences, and storytelling or story sharing, which I like to call it sometimes, is really important and valuable. So there's many things that I've gotten to learn over the last few years since the launch of this book. But one of the biggest pieces is that it's not necessarily even about sharing my story. Yeah. It's about sharing my story so that you share your story.
Got it. Wow. Oh, there's a lot out there, and I'm glad you're making so many people aware. Did you have an area of focus for us today, in particular, that you want to share?
Yeah, I would just love to talk about how we get to a place of self-love, self-acceptance. And oftentimes we're offering those tools to others that we might see in our lives. That could be a friend, a family member, a sibling, a child, a parent. Yeah. Where you're seeing that there's a lack of self-worth, self-value, self-love, self-acceptance, self-care. All of those things tie in together. So I would love to kind of dive into that and some of the ways that I found avenues to kind of that growth piece, as well as what I found in my research. And I would love just to share those, kind of tips with you. And I don't have anything written down or anything prepared. This is how I like to do it. It comes from the heart. So, wherever you want to start, if that's good, we can start
self-care. There. Yeah. Give us some of those tips. Give us some advice. Oh, I love your mug.
Yeah.
Love always wins. I love it. So did you want to discuss a little bit about self-care in a sense? And I apologize again, my voice is so raspy.
No worries. I would love to jump into that. I think the biggest piece is, for me, it was realizing that there was a divine essence, of presence, some type of higher power that they might call it an NA or AA, right? But it doesn't even have to be that, right? I have atheist friends and people that are humanist and agnostic that just believe in love. And that belief in love is a high enough, or is a different power outside of yourself, that allows you to kind of look at the bigger picture. And then you can turn that love inward. So you can turn that higher power, that divine presence inward, whatever you call it, right? And for lack of words today, I'll use the word love and God interchangeably. But for love, so say you're in a place in life where you're in addiction, or maybe you're not even in addiction, but you're struggling with mental health struggles. You're struggling with this or that or the other. What I've seen in the research I've done as well, is that when people have trauma, which we all have, I can blanket statement say that. We've all had some type of trauma, be it something spiritual or something emotional or physical, or et cetera. There are so many levels of trauma. And what really helps is to have those pivot points, those growth points, those growth markers. And what that looks like for many people, being some type of higher power. And even if that's love, and turning that inward into oneself, and then letting that kind of grow from there, right? It's like you can see the beautiful flowers and trees outside of yourself, but it's taking those seeds that planted those trees and flowers, putting those in your own heart, allowing them to grow. in their own time, right? We can't always control that. So that's one of the other biggest things that I like to tell people. It's like, your journey isn't, you can't put a time limit. You can't put a, and you can't for other people's journeys as well. Like, all you can do is simply love them. So if you're trying to help somebody reach a certain point, or, recover from trauma, or, and there's no true recovery from trauma. Like, we get to a place where we acknowledge our trauma, we know it's there, and we grow from it. But the recovery is kind of a facade, because you grow past it in some degrees, but it's there still. It's part of who you are. And I think that's part of what I saw in my research around post-traumatic spiritual growth, which, just for the audience who might not know, so after trauma, there seems to be some type of pivot point, some type of growth point, and then growth beyond that. And that is, some people like Brene Brown would define resiliency as a bounce back to normalcy. So you're resilient, right? You have trauma, you're resilient, you bounce back to a normal place that you were. Post-traumatic growth is beyond that. It goes beyond resiliency. So you're allowed to, you have the opportunity to grow beyond just the place where you were prior to the trauma. And this looking at it this way really helped me to understand my own journey. And as I dealt with all of these things, right, like drug and alcohol abuse, this, that, and the other, I was really just in awe with being able to navigate that. And it made me wonder how I could help others navigate similar things. And so in that process, what I really dove into in my dissertation was this post-traumatic spiritual growth aspect that allowed someone to look at their own journey, look at the journeys of those around them, and might be able to pinpoint, okay, here's a pivot point, here's a growth point. And also, these pivot points and growth points were vastly different, but they were all in these areas of connection. So connection to oneself, connection to a higher power, like I mentioned prior, connection to others, realization. So you could call this like epiphany, or moments of like clarity, messages or downloads that some people in the spiritual community call them that. Then you have these other aspects of where people learned. It was simple opening up a book, as simple as listening to a podcast or watching a TV show that was empowering or enlightening to them, that helped them have a change or a pivot in their life. And then this growth looked vastly similar to that. It looked like people learning, growing, sharing, advocating. Storytelling was big, giving back and volunteering, teaching others, continuing to learn and grow, acceptance. I mean, all of these aspects really played in with the research I saw, where all these people that had these markers of avenues of learning and growth, that all looked different, but were vastly similar in the fact that they all kind of had an aspect of connection, authenticity, owning one's gifts and strengths and abilities, sharing their stories and their lessons. And so I really I find it intriguing that that's the work I was doing. So I started my book before I started my dissertation, and it just happens to be that they're just really perfectly aligned, and has given me such a greater sense of how I can help others in the world.
Got it. And by the way, we didn't establish your website and contact information. Do you mind sharing it right now?
Yeah, certainly. So you can find me on RyanJosephAllen.com. Allen is ALLEN. Or you can find it at mydrugdealerbroughtmetogod.com. You can also, check out Love Must Win's websites, lovemustwin.org. Yeah. And like I said, sometimes you get on these podcasts and it's funny because, there's a million things we could talk about, but at the end of the day, like, I just really let the host or the divine or both or all of us
dictate and navigate. And the biggest thing in the news now, unfortunately, is all the trauma, right? The trauma of all those children's lives lost, in Texas, and then all those lives lost in Buffalo and New York. It's just, there's just so much trauma, and how do people deal? How do they grieve? How do they heal from that? And as a coach, I'm sure you work with people who go through trauma. I mean, all sorts of trauma. And is there anything that, by the way, it's ryanjosephallen.com, that you could share with us about trauma and grief and how we start to rebuild to get better? I mean, it's so hard losing a child. It's the unthinkable, right?
Yeah, so I'll share a little story from what Love Must Win. Part of the work that we've done in the past is we were there at the Pulse Memorial for the year 1 and 2 and 3 of the Pulse massacre, where 49 people were tragically taken way too early. And getting to be there, what we did is we offered our Hearts and Hugs program, which essentially is a handwritten message on a heart on a physical piece of paper, cardboard, or foam, and then given hugs. So we had 6 team members from here in the Cincinnati area as one of the 49 nonprofits that they chose to do a community service project that first year. And I always say to this day, that is the most valuable work that I've ever done, is being able to be on the ground with people, even a year later, and give hugs to people and encouraging messages and just hold space for them. It really taught me what holding space means. And I've brought this up in places, even clinical arenas, and I don't know what that means, but essentially holding space, it just means being there for somebody, actively listening. You don't have to say or do anything except be there, be present with that person, and allow them to share and allow them to grieve and allow them to process. And so during that, I hugged hundreds of people, thousands of people in the 3 years that we did that project in Orlando there. And it's been the most valuable work that I think I've ever done, like I said. And getting to hug, I mean, I remember I hugged this one guy. He just fell in my arms and just sobbed. And my whole shirt was wet with his tears. And eventually when he was able to get out the words, every now and again, I would just rub his shoulder or he'd lay his head on me. So I would just have my hand on his head, but I didn't say anything. But eventually he said something, and he said, I was supposed to be there that night and I didn't go because I was depressed or whatever, having some anxiety and depression issues. And I didn't go. And now it should have been me that was taken, not them. And I mean, what do you say to somebody like that, right? So you don't,
I know.
you hug them and hold them and let them know that you love them. I mean, I simply just said, I'm happy that you're here. Happy that you weren't taken early, and now maybe you can help others. Or, at the very end, after he was done crying, and at some point we had a therapist with us that had traveled, and she had came in and saw the situation, and we kind of just huddled together and all held each other, because what do you do in situations like that? It's even a therapist. That's the best, answer for even a therapist at that point. It was like, come in and hug him, at the very end, give him a resource of an organization in the area that dealt with, mental health and suicide, and making sure you have those resources available. But that resource wasn't, if we just came in with a big sign, here's a resource, I mean, that's fine. But holding space for someone is totally different than that. So I would say, for me, when I go into a situation like that, where someone's received such horrific trauma, it's really just about holding space. And that holding space looks like sometimes not even saying a word, or sometimes just saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's the worst thing that could ever happen. I'm so sorry for your loss and for the situation, for the tragedy. But there's no like right answer for what's going to be right in every situation. But I will say holding space is kind of the go-to, and you can hold space in different kind of levels or different areas for depending on the situation.
Oh, gosh. Wow. And as also now a spiritual coach, transformational coach, let me ask you more about the spiritual side of things. So let me ask you before, I don't know if you do tarot cards, is it just something that you feel, or when you say spiritual coaching, where does that come from? It's just an intuitiveness that you have, or do you have a mediumship? Yeah. Are you also psychic or medium?
Well, it's funny. There's a long family line of that. And my mom, who's been a psychologist, owned her own private practice for 20 years, now does healing work as her profession. So she integrates some of the things she learned in the clinical field and her passions for doing healing work in the kind of psychic realms. We steer away from those words. But yeah, I would say definitely my coaching involves my intuition, my divine guidance, my heart. And that's really the biggest piece, is I allow my heart to be opened up. I actively listen, And then we kind of dive in. I let I call it the divine, God,
Yes.
love, guide how we go, what messages are received for this person. And really the spiritual coaching is also for people that have experienced spiritual or religious trauma. So that's really the intention behind the words spiritual or transformational coach for me. Is I take people that have had spiritual trauma, religious trauma, both, and talk them through that, talk them through the healing process in that area, also using my divine spiritual gifts as well. So it's funny that you said that, because I usually don't share that too openly with others, but I use it. It's very natural. It's very, it's part of the work that I'm called to do. And it's just navigating this kind of, navigating the academic sector, the business sector, the corporate sector, the nonprofit sector, and also the spiritual sector, because they're all intertwined in what I do. And so it's really cool to be able to bring all of those aspects together, and really still put the divine at the center of that. I always say, when you bring authenticity, your skill set and education and knowledge, your story, and the divine, so like a 4-pointed kind of diamond or something, you get so much authenticity and realness when you're able to bring those 4 things to the table. And that's one of the skills I teach people, is how to show up authentically, how to use their skills, how to own their skills, how to get a connection with some type of divine, even if that's just simply love, how to connect with love in a way maybe they haven't been able to before, and really working with your energy systems, your chakras, breathing techniques. I've been trained in Kundalini, a practice called oneness out of India, which is a hands-on healing modality. There's many other ways outside of my academic and professional life that I've dove into spirituality, but I do incorporate those in what I do, regardless. And it actually ends up being an experience where I feel most people benefit so beautifully. And even if they don't know they've been a part of a spiritual experience, it was. And it was intentionally done so to be that way. So thanks for bringing that up. Jill, I don't always share those things. I kind of like sneak them in when people have me speak or do things, and it's per the audience, right?
I could feel it. Yeah, you got some energy there about you. And which is an extra bonus in a sense, to have someone like you guiding you along your transformational way. And do you want to share some experiences of some of the people you've helped or you're helping, that maybe some of our listeners can relate to and kind of empathize and feel, wow, this is me, or I've walked in these shoes, or I could benefit from this?
Yeah. So one of my clients is this beautiful healer. She owns a big piece of property here on one of our local rivers and does a lot of like sustainable programming. She does this really cool event called River Vibes. And it was funny when she reached out for coaching, I was like, you don't need me to help, but everyone needs some help in some area, and that's okay. Right. Like I might need help organizing my financial aspects. Someone else like her might need help. She needed help really kind of like organizing her thoughts. What are my goals? What are my objectives? What are the ways that I can share my gifts in a way that's more streamlined? So it's funny because people reach out for all different things, and I work in really pretty much all the realms, minus the financial piece. I will say, when I got my MBA, that was the one semester I really despised so anyway, so there's areas where I reached out to a financial coach and a friend who does financial coach and planning. So we all can use a coach in some way, shape, or form, even if it's on top of having therapy in a clinical setting or those kind of things. I just like to remind my healers out there, my coaches out there, it's okay to have a coach. It's okay to have a healer. It's actually a benefit. I go to my mom for spiritual healing sessions. I go to friends who do other healings for me and other modalities and kind of wellness. And I think that's beautiful, and it's beautiful to support each other. So I think outside of wanting to share specific stories, I just wanted that piece to shine through, because I think sometimes as a healer or a coach or a therapist or a psychologist, you think, oh, I'm the one that's giving this. But in reality, we all have something to give and share. I'm sure my financial advisor wouldn't say that she changes lives by helping people with their finance, but she really does. She's very helpful. but she does. And by her coaching me in areas where I wasn't as strong, helps me in ways that she doesn't even know. And so I think that's really powerful when we're able to step into that and own our gifts, but also see our weaknesses and see our weaknesses as strengths, and help other people build up our weaknesses. And then we can help others while we do that as well. So it's like it's a fully functioning system. It's not just about me. It's not just about this or that. It's about helping everyone. Like everyone works together. And I think that's what's really cool in the kind of spiritual healing community, is that we all kind of do that. We offer session for session, or this for that. I want to do this retreat with you, and then can you offer me 5 sessions for my retreat space or whatever. And it's really a fun type of economy that's outside of our traditional kind of 3D way we think about finances and economy. So I love that aspect. I also have dove into a shamanic elemental journey the past 18 months, and where we go through the elements, earth, water, fire, and air, and really use that as a way of healing and growing and learning in ways I just never thought were possible. And actually so much so that I loved the ideology behind the elements. So I launched just recently, I soft launched, and I guess this is the official launch today.
Okay, cool.
It's called the Dream Manifesting Portal. So it's a way for gay men, gay identifying men, to connect about their dreams as we work through the elements in a shamanic journey. It's a 6-month living workshop. So you show up every day for 6 months. We work through each element. We learn how to identify your dreams, grow your dreams, create your dreams, and launch your dreams. It's a really beautiful process. I'm super excited about it. If I would have had something like this when I first came out, it would have been life-changing. Because you get these spiritual nuggets throughout the experience. You get some trauma nuggets of how to help heal trauma. You get some nuggets on this and that and the other. So I'm really excited about it. You can find more information at my website too. It's ryanjosephalen.com/portal. And you can find out and register, send me an email. We can do a consult and kind of figure out where you're at, what you're up to, and see if it's a good fit for you. But that's for gay identifying men, any age range, 18 and up. So, and with parent permission, maybe even 16 or whatever. But we're super excited for it. Me and a close friend and colleague of mine out of Orange County are really spearheading this project, because we've seen the need for gay men to have a voice and to see their dreams come true. And we're hoping to expand that eventually to all of the LGBTQ plus community and other areas as well. So stay tuned for that. There's stuff coming all the time.
All right, wonderful. And just again, remind us of the website one more time, please.
ryanjosephalen.com, ALLEN. Would love to connect with you, collaborate on projects, work together, get a session, learn more about my book, learn more about some workshops coming up, keynote speaking opportunities. All of those things are on there. I would just love an opportunity to spread some love with you, in whatever subject or area that is.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Hope you enjoy your extended weekend. Looking forward to the next time we speak. Thank you again, Dr. Ryan.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.